once again to my podcast. This is Pastor Richard Seafried, and the podcast is entitled Timely Truths for Troubled Times. Boy, it sure is true we live in troubled times. Today I want to talk to you about the big news story from yesterday, and that is the mass shooting that took place in Buffalo, New York at a grocery store. According to the news this morning, there's 10 fatalities, and that may increase. What an awful, terrible situation that is. It really impacts us because my wife and I, we lived in upstate New York, just 20 miles from Buffalo, when I pastored the First Baptist Church of Marilla. And we lived in East Aurora, and we actually got our groceries at a Tops supermarket there in East Aurora, New York. Most of the grocery stores in that area are either Wegmans or Tops. And so this shooting in the Tops grocery store by this crazed gunman is just an awful reminder of the terrible times in which we live. Can the news get any worse? Almost every day there's some kind of a story of a mass shooting or some kind of just an atrocious act of violence. I want to tie that in to what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24. You know, there's three significant statements Jesus made in Matthew 24 as he is describing the end of the age. He is giving a prophecy of what the world will be like right at the end of this age of grace. And if you are taking notes, you might want to write these three things down. The first thing he says in verse 10, many shall be offended and betray one another and shall hate one another. We have seen a tremendous increase in what they call hate crimes. People just hate another religious group or another racial group, or sometimes even another political persuasion. The hatred that we are seeing that is so prevalent in our culture today is just really out of hand. Christianity, of course, is known for its love. Jesus said to the disciples in the upper room, "By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, if you have love one toward another." And so these hate crimes, as they are called, and the initial police reports, by the way, seem to indicate that this shooter was motivated by some kind of a hatred, some kind of a prejudice. And so this is a sign of the times, isn't it? It really is. The second thing Jesus said is in the next verse, verse 11. You can mark this down. Not only will people hate one another, but it says, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall grow cold. Well, how true that is. I mean, it's almost unbelievable that people could have such hard hearts, such a lack of love, such a cold-hearted, calloused attitude toward to life itself. Taking people's lives innocently. I mean, people that just are innocent and had no real offense toward the shooter. And so that's the second thing Jesus said. Number one, in the end of the age, people will hate one another. Secondly, the love of many will wax cold. And then the third thing Jesus said is over in verse 37, where he says, as the days of Noah were, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And if you go back to the book of Genesis, you find out that one of the characteristics about the days of Noah was this, that the violence filled the earth. There was violence all through the earth. And so Jesus here in Matthew 24 says, just as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. Violence. We see it everywhere. It's on every hand. I can apply the words of Jesus to three specific types of violence. First of all, there's the violence that comes from at the hands of the Islamic terrorists. And that's just been in the last 20 years or so, the tremendous rise in violence all around the world because of radical Islamic terrorism. And then there's the violence, number two, of these mass shootings that seem to be so predominant. I mean, I don't remember back when I was a child, back in the 50s and 60s, even during the Vietnam War and all that, but I don't remember gunmen going into theaters or into schools or into grocery stores and just opening fire on innocent civilians. I mean, it might have happened once or twice, but it seems like in the last few years, that's all we hear about is these mass shootings. So is it a sign of the times? I really believe it is. I believe it fulfills exactly what Jesus said was going to happen at the end of the age. People would hate one another, the love of many will wax cold, and violence will fill the earth. Of course, there's another form of violence, and our Supreme Court is trying to deal with that issue right now, and that's the violence that comes from abortion. You realize that we've been almost 50 years with Roe versus Wade and the legalization of abortion at 1.5 million innocent babies killed each of those years. We're talking close to 75 million lives. Think of that. 75 million lives have been needlessly, carelessly snuffed out because of the violence of abortion. Well, I sure hope this Supreme Court ruling stands, that these justices are not intimidated by the abortion rights crowd. And I just pray that somehow this violence that is all through our culture will stop. Well, we know it will when Jesus comes back, the one who's the Prince of Peace, and he will have a reign of perfect peace on the earth. Well, thank God for that. I don't know about you, but I'm sure looking forward to that day. Well, may the Lord richly bless you. And I'm on a schedule now, in case you haven't quite figured it out. I'm doing these instead of 4 times a month, that is every week, 3 times, somewhere around the 5th, the 15th, and the 25th. So you can count on those, and if you're looking for the next installment of my podcast, keep that in mind. I'm doing it on a 10-day interval, somewhere around the 5th, 15th, and 25th of each month. Well, God give you a great day. I trust that the Lord will richly bless you.